Welcome fathers who are looking to inspire their kids and become fearless. This is the Become a Fearless Father show and I'm your host, Klaas van Oosterhout. I'm a father of 2 boys, husband and entrepreneur. This show is created to teach you how to take control and enjoy the most difficult job you've ever faced, fatherhood. I'm going to keep it real and share real life experience. A heads up, there is no magic pill. You will have to put in the hours, sweat and tears to achieve victory. Are you ready to improve your health, wealth, relationships, knowledge and become the hero your family needs you to be? I know you are. So get your pen and paper ready and let's become fearless fathers together.
Yeah, Peter, I'm really excited to have you on my show. And I believe this is the perfect interview with the perfect person to start my first interview with, because when we've been talking and what I've seen on your website and stuff, everything about fearless, and that's what I want to present, become a fearless father. But of course, I'm going to assume that everybody's going to have the first question is like, okay, so what does that actually mean? So let's first start off with, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, your story, where you're from, and what you've been up to?
Yeah, first of all, Klaas, what an honor to be interviewed here because I so believe in your mission. I think a lot of people talk on the subject of fear, right? Tony Robbins talks about fear and becoming fearless. And I love how you chose to serve fathers because I don't think there's a more fear-driven, right, experience than becoming a parent, whether it's a father or a mother. When you are responsible for your kids and their livelihood and their, all of that, it's the greatest opportunity for you to face those fears and to become more courageous than you could ever come if you'd never had children in the first place. And this is all from my own theoretical experience. I want to be very clear. I don't have kids yet. However, I do plan to be a dad one day. So I'd love to share a little bit about, as you asked, my backstory, because the reason why I am so passionate about overcoming fear, about facing fear, is honestly because my entire life has been consumed by it. Mm-hmm. So it started as early as, and I'd love to share this story, Klaas, it started as early as when I was a child, and I was about 10 years old. And you'll find out about this as you read my book. I was about 10 years old, and I was sitting down in a courtroom with my grandparents on my left, an attorney on my right, and my mother directly across from me.
Wow.
And I had to look into my mom's eyes and tell her that I no longer felt safe living with her because of her alcoholism. Devastating, right? Heartbroken. And what happened in that moment was that I made an unconscious decision. I decided that telling my mother the truth meant that I lost her love, which it felt like. And what happens is we go through life, and this is really important for the fathers watching this to hear this. We go through life and we make this unconscious decision, and that decision eventually becomes a fundamental belief that drives our life for the better or for the worse. My belief loss was telling the truth equaled losing love. Not a healthy belief, is it?
No.
Yeah, and so literally I became this people pleaser. I became this inauthentic version of myself to seek love and approval from anyone outside of myself. So that was my first experience really feeling this, fundamental fear that was debilitating. And thank God, I have so much to celebrate about my relationship now with my mom. She's been sober 19 years, coming up 20 years, right? And so I can't wait to go deeper into what being fearless means and how to overcome fear as it relates to fathers.
All right, cool. That sounds, I was actually, because I read your bio, of course, and I read the story about your mom, and actually that was one of my in-between questions is like, okay, so how is your relationship with your mom now? So that's really cool to hear because, yeah, of course, the relationship with our parents is the most important one that we can have and cherish.
And that reminds me, I do want to share, of course, about my relationship with my dad because it's specific to fathers. So that was my experience as a child growing up with my mom. Later on, I went and I moved with my dad when my mom was going through rehab and recovery. I lived with my father, and we had a great relationship in the beginning. But sadly, he too started to be controlled by alcohol and prescription drug addiction. And so I'll never forget, I was 25 years old. I'm working in investment banking. And I get a phone call from a family member. Your father's just been rushed to the hospital. You've got to fly home immediately if you want to say goodbye. And I will never forget, Klaas. I remember walking into hospice and seeing my dad, who was my childhood hero. I had seen him like emaciated in bed in hospice. And I remember having so much anger. I had anger towards him. I remember looking at him and saying, Dad, why did you do this to yourself? And why did you do this to me? And he looked at me and he said, Peter, because I'm afraid. My dad was consumed by his fear of not living up to his parents' expectations.
Wow.
He was consumed by his fear of not being enough, and he literally gave up on life and drank himself to death. And again, I share this detail just because I want people to kind of know where I came from and what I experienced. And it was that moment, Klaas, when I decided I'm never going to let myself, a loved one, or anyone I come in contact with be controlled by fear. I read books. I hired mentors. I attended events. I hiked high mountains. I jumped out of planes. I did all these things to understand and experience fear, and discovered a system, discovered a process, discovered a framework to help others for it. So that's why I do what I do.
Nice. Well, I appreciate you earlier saying that you love my mission. I love from the beginning your everything that I read, and your mission as well. I think it's really great, especially with and I want to go into a little bit more in depth later on about how that came about and how you turned that around. For now, I'd like to start with what might be the most obvious question that I can ask during this interview, but I think it might also be one of the most important ones for the people out there. Sometimes I'm afraid that people think that fearless mindset is something, a little bit hooby-dooby or whatever you want to call it. So, and maybe per person we have a different understanding of what it means. But in your case, can you explain a little bit of, what does it mean, fearless mindset, and what does it mean to live a fearless life?
Absolutely, I can. Yeah. So I think the place that I want to start, Klaas, is I want to define what fear is. Because when I say being fearless, what I'm not saying that you're going to be without fear. I actually don't think that that's healthy. There's a healthy form of fear. Yeah. What I mean by being fearless is I mean having the courage, having the commitment, having the confidence to go do that thing that scares you. That's to me what fearless is, right? And so there are really kind of a couple definitions of fear. One is the feeling of agitation or anxiety caused by the presence of imminent danger. When we are in danger, we feel fear, right? Now, I never want to take that fear away from somebody. That keeps us alive, right? The problem is, the blessing, right? This is a blessing. This is not a problem, but very few of us are surrounded by imminent danger. If you're watching this video, there's plenty of people that are in a place where they wake up and they don't know if they're going to survive that day. So I'm not speaking to those extreme circumstances. What I'm speaking to is the people that are watching this on Facebook right now or watching the recording of this. We're pretty much in a safe environment right now, right? And there's not a lot of imminent danger. However, there's still fear. So why is that? Well, that's a different type of fear, right? The fear that I would define that feeling as, when you're not in danger but you feel fear, is the chaotic projection of a painful future. So for you watching this, write that down, the chaotic projection of a painful future. Fear does not exist in the present moment, right? When you're not in danger, I'm not afraid I don't feel a lot of fear as I'm doing this interview with you right now, Klaas. But I could imagine, and you probably don't feel a lot of fear either, but I can imagine before we started, think about this, before we started, maybe you felt more fear 15 minutes ago or 30 minutes ago or last night when we were thinking about our interview today, right? When I speak on stage, once I get through the first couple minutes, I don't feel fear. I'm comfortable, I'm natural. But those hours and those days leading up to it, I'm like, oh my gosh. So what am I doing? I'm not being present. I'm projecting a painful future. So to make this as simple as possible for your follower, for the person watching this, there's two ways to define fear. There's rational fears, and those are fears that keep you alive. and there are irrational fears. And those are fears that keep you from living.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most powerful distinctions I had ever learned, it comes from a man named Jesse Elder, one of my mentors. He shared that with me, gosh, I don't know how many years ago. And so if you imagine that you're woken up in the middle of the night, right, by a burglar breaking into your home, that fight or flight response, that fear that you feel, that's a good thing. I want you to feel that.
Mm-hmm.
But that fear that you feel when you're stepping on stage, when you're launching a coaching business, when you're in a sales call or an enrollment conversation with somebody that you can help, that nervousness, that anxiety, that fear, that's keeping you from living. And so the first step is to clarify what type of fear is this, and to know that the only way to overcome an irrational fear is to actually do that thing that scares you. That's the only way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? By you doing this over and over again, I'm so honored to be the first person you're interviewing. And I know you're going to interview so many other people. And the cool thing is by interview 10, by interview 50, by interview 100, you're going to be like, this is natural. This isn't scary, right? But when you're starting, when I published my book for the first time, I was terrified.
Yeah.
So does that help answer your question on how I would define fearless?
Absolutely. That's really powerful, and that's going to be wonderful to use with all the people to give a good understanding. And yeah, I actually, out of fear, didn't want to start with the interviews until after the summer. Kids are almost done with school, and I have to take care of the kids. And I was like, I'm going to do this. And my mentor actually said, look, you got 3 more weeks within this quarter. Why not do it already? Get over that fear, and then be better by the time that you really, really want to start. So I definitely understand what you're saying, and I think it's very useful for all the people.
Hey, sorry for the interruption. I know you're really enjoying the show. Just want to make sure, if you're liking this information, please subscribe and press the like button. And also, go visit becomeafearlessfather.com. You get the opportunity to share your biggest challenge at the moment as a father, and it gives me the opportunity to try and help you overcome this. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of the show.
So I want to picture actually 2 different scenarios, or 2 different kind of groups of people that I see. Each of them dealing with their own fears and their own problems. So in one, I would like to go back a little bit to your childhood. And there's many people, or many men in the world, that had a childhood as rough as yours, or differently, but still very challenging. However, I think that most men take the experience and let it run their lives in a negative way. Which of course, that will later influence, if as fathers, will influence, their children, which they are raising, or even decided not to raise because of fears. So that's going to be a horrible experience for both father and child, et cetera, and might even just continue in a snowball effect. However, then I look at your experience and the fears that you've been facing in your childhood. You actually made it work and completely changed it, and just got a whole different, next level kind of focus. Yes. and mission and sharing with other people. So could you explain a little bit, from the beginning, on how that came about and how you work towards where you are now with the mindset that you have?
For sure I can, yeah. So I would say that growing up with my parents, just my immediate parents, my mom and dad, when they were struggling, and my mom's extraordinary. She has so much strength and so much, compassion, and she helps so many people today. And there was a time when she was really struggling, right? When I was being raised by them, I didn't feel like I had great role models. And so many people who've gone through challenging times may feel like I'm in an environment where I have no choice, right? I'm being taught all these negative things. And what I actually conditioned my mind to believe is that I learned from my dad how not to be a dad.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And many people could actually take that and go, oh, I'm just going to follow in the footsteps blindly and take on the same patterns and the same problems that my father, that my mother did. I was very blessed, Klaas, to have good influencers like my grandparents. So I definitely was blessed in that. And the truth is, though, I didn't have a lot of connection with some of them, right? One of my grandparents I'd only see a couple times a year. So how did I create the mindset? I sought out experts. I sought out support because I didn't feel like I had immediate role models. So what did I turn to? I turned to books, really, right? There are no podcasts and there are no interviews like this. I turned to books. Now, as the internet started to really pick up in the 2000s, then I started to listen to audiobooks. And then I started to listen to podcasts. And these thought leaders, these authors, these speakers, these coaches became my role models. And so it created an entirely new perspective for me. It created a possibility that I didn't know existed. All I had with this pain, and when I was a kid, I had so much hurt, so much sadness, so much anger, even hate at times. And what I did was as I learned in my own personal growth, I discovered, thank God I went through all that because that helped shape who I am today. I wouldn't be half the man I am today, Klaas. You wouldn't be half the father you are if you didn't go through what some of the pain of your past was, right? And so I just have learned that anytime I'm going through a painful moment, and I'm not saying I'm through, right? There's times when I'm going to lose loved ones. There's times when I'm going to have challenges in relationships or in business. I'm always seeking out what's the positive lesson. What am I being called to learn in this very moment?
Wow.
And that, I think, is one of the most valuable perspectives you could ever have. And I want to share a story that I think is really powerful as it relates to this, because a lot of people hear my story and they go, oh my gosh, how did you not become an alcoholic? How did you not follow in those footsteps, right? It was on both sides of your family. You were genetically predisposed, all of that stuff. And first of all, I believe, why accept a prediction that doesn't serve you? Why ever accept a prediction that doesn't serve you, right? If somebody's telling you can't be an entrepreneur, you can't be a great parent, you can't be, in good shape, why would you ever accept that, right? That's somebody else's fear talking to you. That's not you. But the story that I want to share is a story about an interview that Oprah did back, this is probably like 20 years ago. And she interviewed these two sisters. And one of them was incredibly successful. She was an actress. She was a philanthropist. She created so much social change in the world. And the other sister was homeless. She was living under a bridge in the streets of Chicago. And Oprah found about these two sisters, and she brought them into her studio, and she interviewed them. And she interviewed them separately, and she found out that their story was very similar. They both grew up with a father that physically and sexually abused them.
Wow.
Right? They grew up with a mother that was addicted to crack and to heroin. And she heard this horrible story, right, of these women growing up. And she asked the first woman, who was homeless, how did you end up here? How did you end up in this current quality of life? And the woman looks at her and she goes, Oprah, how do you think I ended up here? Did you hear my story? Did you hear how devastating my childhood was and how hard it was? And she goes, oh, well, yeah, I guess that makes sense. I totally understand that. Later, Oprah interviewed the other sister who was very successful, and she asked the same question. How did you come from that and get to where you are today? And she said the same thing. How do you think I did? Do you hear where I came from, what I had to go through? I had no choice but to succeed. I had no choice to get out of that chaos that I was in. So for any of you listening to this, if you've had pain in your past, you have a choice still to this day. Even if it's running your life right now, you can make a shift like that. And the sooner you make a shift, the sooner you create a possibility for your kids. The fathers that are watching this, I'm speaking directly to you. So there may be pain between you and your dad. And you can learn whatever positive lessons came from that pain and then create an even deeper, more fearless relationship with your own son or your own daughter. So, yeah, that's just me speaking from the heart.
Yeah, no, I can tell. And the more you talk, the more I'm blessed to have you on as my first guest. You're dropping bombs. So this is, wow, this is perfect. It's I'm learning tons. So I'm enjoying myself. That's perfect. Now, we're talking about childhoods. Of course, you don't know nothing about my childhood. My childhood has actually been really good.
Yep.
I had a great father. He worked a lot. He wasn't a lot home, but I had a really good father. I have a really good mother. I actually have another business on the side, and I'm doing that together with my mother, so I'm really blessed. None of them have done drugs or alcohol or crazy things. So, but there's also where the danger lies, in my opinion. That's the second part. That's what I was telling you. There's two different kind of flip sides to everything, I guess. Because for me, I just lulled away a little bit and just, life is nice and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just, I'm getting by. I'm happy. It's good. And I think actually the majority of the people are like that. They're just living life, just going with the stream. And sometimes there's a storm and you just hold on and scream and, how do you make it or not? And then you come up on top and you keep just going. There's nothing that changes that. And, then it's difficult to say, okay, now I want to change and I want to upgrade my life and I want to, go towards that fearless life. Yes. So you have a lot of experience with I'm assuming from what I've read from you and what I've seen from you, with different kinds of people with different kinds of backgrounds. Yes. So what is your system and what is your message towards the, let's say, normal average men, to give it a name?
For sure. Yeah, I love that. So first of all, I want to clarify one thing. And I talked a lot about kind of like the pain of my past. And I'm not saying that you have to have pain in your past in order to become motivated, right? Or to have a struggle in your past to have an opportunity to become fearless. There's a lot of people that had similar, maybe Klaas, very comfortable childhoods and great relationship with their parents. And yet they still are in a position where something happened that created a decision that led to a limiting belief that's holding them back right now, right? An example of this could be, I've studied a lot of different forms of psychology and influence, and one thing that I've studied is neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. And it's fascinating because I've learned that people go through these significant emotional events of their life. Now, it doesn't mean it has to be traumatic, right? It could be the most basic, kind of common thing, yet as a child, our unconscious mind creates this story and attaches meaning to something that I'm not enough, or I'm unlovable, or I'm not worthy of financial success, or whatever that is. It could be a pattern you picked up from a parent, right? And to have the tools to be aware of what that is, and then tools to reverse it. So what I would say is step number one to your question is, how do you do this, is start telling the truth. Start telling the truth. A lot of people are wanting to keep up this certain image that we have the perfect career and the perfect relationships and the perfect health, when in truth, we are all going through challenges, right? And the more open, the more vulnerable, the more real you are about that, the more you're going to be able to stand courageously in the face of those fears. What most people would say would be, well, just go do that thing that scares you and try to think that it's not scary, right? And what I would say is actually the opposite. So whatever it is that person who's watching this is afraid of right now, what I would do is I want you to actually define in detail what your worst nightmare is of that fear happening. Like, go into painstaking detail. So this is very counterintuitive. Most people think just positive think, and I don't believe in that, right? So envision, like, what's the worst case scenario? Let's say somebody is wanting to build a business and they have a great, steady income from their job. Their fear is what? Losing that income, right? But let's go a layer deeper. Is that really their fear? No, then you go deeper and you find that their fear is maybe not being able to provide for their family, maybe losing their home, losing their quality of life, not being a good role model to their kids. So I want you to take that fear and I want you to define exactly what it is. That's step one. Number two is I want you to list out all the things that you could do to prevent that fear from happening. Because every single one of us have had fears that we put in measures in place where we're like, okay, cool, I'm going to do this so that doesn't happen. Right? So come up with a list of what you could do, who you could be, who you could surround yourself that would prevent that worst case scenario from happening. And then let's imagine the worst case scenario happens. Let's look at that and say, if it happens, what could I do to repair the damage? So step number one is define the fear. Step number 2 is list out what you can do to prevent it. And step number 3 is list out what you can do to repair it. Because we've all had fears come to reality, and we realize that we've all made it through, right? People have had bankruptcies, people have had divorces, people have had health scares, and people make it through that because that's who we are as human beings. We're meant to persevere. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I would do, last thing, would be I really want you to look at the cost of not doing that thing that scares you. If you can have the cost way more than the benefit, than the risk of doing it. Like if you look at it and you say, you know what, I've discovered that I'm not happy with my job, right? I want to be a great parent. I love my kids, but no matter what I do, when I go in and I work 50 hours a week, I'm just miserable. Well, guess what? Your kids are noticing that, aren't they? So what is the cost of 5, 10, 20 more years in this soul-sucking job? How is that going to impact your kids and their path? When you can look at the cost of inaction being greater than the cost of action, you take courageous action and you literally become fearless. Exactly. Does that help?
No, that's perfect. That definitely helps. I appreciate that explanation. And I'm for sure all the fathers out there that want to watch this, they want to really appreciate this. And yeah, it's very practical. So of course you have to do it, but it's very practical. And I think that the biggest thing that I've learned in this case and with this that I'm going to do is, the first thing that you should do is just immediately start doing those things. Look for it and start working with it. Because if you don't immediately implement it, then that's the fear, the fear of trying to implement it and work with it. So that's really perfect. Yeah. So one of the other things that I've noticed now that I'm really working towards becoming a fearless father, what I'm really trying to do and where I'm trying to get that energy from is, I'm trying to be the perfect inspiration and example for my kids, right? So I'm eating healthy, I'm working out every day, I wake up really early, et cetera, et cetera. I can go on and on and on, and I'm really starting to notice the changes in me. I dropped a lot of weight, starting to actually grow a little bit of muscle. I'm reading books. I've never read books in my life. So, I'm really starting to see that. But, in what would you say that are like the benefits of living or having a fearless mindset and living a fearless life? And what are the changes that you have seen with all the people that you have helped up until now?
Love it. Okay. So the biggest benefit at the end of the day is going to be focused around happiness and fulfillment. And I think that's everything that we are striving for unconsciously. We're not consciously seeking out happiness and fulfillment. What we're consciously seeking out is more money, is a faster car, is a bigger house, is nicer clothes, is all these material things that the media, that society has taught us that we need to feel what? Fulfilled and happy. So by you doing those things that scare you, I believe that everything that you desire, Klaas, everything that you watch, you who's watching this, everything that you desire in your life is on the other side of your fears. It's on the other side of your fears. Because if you had them, you would no longer be afraid of doing what it would take to get them, right? So since you don't have maybe what you want yet in a certain area of your life, let's say health and fitness or your career or your relationship, it's because there's fear. And I believe that fear is the biggest thing that slows people down or stops them. My mission is to transform the way the world experiences fear so that it never stops them again. That's why I am on earth. That's why I'm here. So number one, that happiness and fulfillment is on the other side. I always say that the only thing that gets smaller the more you run towards it is fear, right? The more you run away from it, the bigger it gets, the scarier it gets. So it's very counterintuitive there. To be more specific, connection. I think that when we're on our deathbed and we're looking back on our life, I lead an event, Klaas, called the Fearless Life Experience. I do this 3-day retreat in San Diego, and I take people through the experience of conquering fear. And one of the exercises that I have them do, which is a really, really powerful exercise, is I have them write their obituary.
Oh.
Yeah. And what happens is that they write their obituary and they discover that all the things that are causing them stress in life are insignificant when it comes to their meaning of their life. So when they're, passed and they want to be remembered, they don't want to be remembered for the car, or the suits, or the things that they're striving for. They want to be remembered for the values that they left behind, the legacy, the father that they were, or the grandfather that they were, the mother, the grandmother. And it's all about relationships. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing more fearless than putting your commitment to go so deep in relationships as the number one priority. And it's challenging at times. My father didn't have a lot of the tools to communicate at a deep level with me. Mm-hmm. And when I was a kid, it hurt. I wanted to talk more. I wanted to connect more, right? And the truth is that he did the best with what he had. I know that, right? He learned from his dad how to connect and communicate. Now I have studied this a lot, so I feel like I could connect with my future son or daughter in such a deep and meaningful way. So when you're doing the thing that you fear, everything you desire, deeper relationships, better health, more money, more impact, more happiness, more fulfillment is on the other side of that fear. So it's worth stepping outside of your comfort zone. It is worth it. And I want to remind you, the fears don't go away, right? You're doing this first podcast interview, right? This first interview. And, like I said, you probably won't be feeling the same level of nervousness or fear in 10 episodes or 100 episodes, but maybe then you're speaking to an audience of 100 people. That's a little scary. Then maybe the next one is you're speaking to an audience of 1,000 people, right? There's always going to be a new fear. And I believe that you're either growing or you're dying. There's no post. And you were right. A lot of people just kind of go through the motions of their life. They coast and they think that I just want to stay comfortable because it hurts to grow. But in reality, they're not flatlining. They're actually going down. So I just invite everyone to get clear on what is it that you really want in your life? What are the things that are most important to you? What are your values? What are your passions? Is your current life giving you those things? And if it's not, what are the things that you need to shift over time? It doesn't happen overnight. I'm not suggesting you do something drastic and go into your job and quit your job and say, I'm done, right? That would not be the smartest thing to do. But build a plan, get clear on the vision, create the strategy, and take action every single day towards it. And everything you desire is on the other side.
Wow, excellent. I'm actually glad you brought up the part of death, because while I was making my question for preparing for this interview, I was actually thinking of, because death is a huge and important part, but at the same time, it's just shoved under the rug by, almost everybody. So I was thinking, I'm not going to talk about that yet in this first interview. So I'm really glad you brought that up. I actually listen to a short 3-minute death meditation every single morning.
Oh, I love it. Can I share a quote from you? One of the most powerful quotes I've ever heard.
Yeah.
It comes from a world-renowned, entrepreneur and business owner, Steve Jobs. Uh-huh. Right? Passed away several years ago now. And his quote was, it was at his 2000 Stanford commencement speech. He gave this incredible commencement speech. Go find it on Google or YouTube if you haven't watched it. And he said this, I'll just read it off the screen here because I just looked it up. He said, quote, "Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart." Mm. It's so powerful to look at that. And that was the thing, that's what led me on the journey of doing this, was really losing my dad. When my dad passed, he was 60 years old, way too young to pass. I was 25, right? And I just looked at life with a different perspective. Mm-hmm. Tomorrow's not guaranteed to any of us. And life is fragile. And why would I stay in a job of working 80, 90, 100 hours a week as an investment banker, miserable, neglecting my health, neglecting my relationships, versus doing something that has meaning to me that I knew I could be way successful at anyway, right? So Yeah, just wanted to share that.
That's perfect. That's absolutely wonderful. I'm glad how things sometimes in life work out, where you want to bring up something, don't, and then it comes up anyway. So yeah, as I said, I think that's the most important thing for people to realize. I actually I write it down every single day. It's like today might be the last day, so I cannot have an excuse to not make this the best day possible and give my all. So I actually want to real quick in between come with Ivo's question. It's not as related to fearless, but I'm sure it's something that you can relate to. He was mentioning that he has a really busy job. Then of course he has 2 kids, and then the women involved, or the woman involved in his life. And then, etc. He loves sports, etc. He's really busy, and he's wondering, okay, so what's, for example, your system to organize everything? So, by the time that you lay down your head, you're like, okay, I've done everything. I've been able to spend my time with the people that I want to spend it with. I've been able to continue with the impact that I want to deliver, etc.
Great question. Yeah, for sure. And I definitely have a system. And this, I wouldn't say this came from me. This was from me from 10 years of study, right? I've hired mentors. I've gone through courses. I figured out how can, people like Richard Branson, right? Richard Branson is one of the most successful entrepreneurs on the planet. He was once asked in an interview, what's the key to his success? And Richard Branson said, well, he exercises every single day. And I'm like, what? This is the busiest man on the planet. How does he find the time to exercise? I think that's what your friend's question is. How do you find the time? And his answer is, you don't find the time. You can't find the time. You've got to create the time. And that comes through your priorities. And so the first thing that I would suggest to your friend is, number one, get clear on all the lists, like create a what I call a stop doing list. A stop doing list is way more valuable than a to-do list. I've got my to-do list right here, right? Every day I check off my to-do list. What's more valuable than that is stop doing the things that are not adding value to my life. There's a whole lot of things that are not the best use of my time, right? And when you stop sacrificing the important for the unimportant, when you let go of all the non-essential things of your life, it creates more bandwidth. It creates more capacity. It creates more freedom for you. That's number one. Number two is, by doing that, now you've got to get clear on, okay, now that you have a little bit of time, what is it specifically that you need to prioritize? The way that I do that, Klaas, is I look at 4 areas in my life. I look at my health. Number one, without my health, I know I can't do anything. And this isn't all in specific order, but 2 would be, say, relationships. 3 would be my spirituality, my connection to purpose or something bigger than me, my mission in life. And 4 would be my business or my career. And I look at those 4 things and I say, what are the most important things for me to, number one, achieve my goals? So get clear on what my goals are. And I'll set annual goals and say, if this is where I want to be a year from now, what is it that I'm going to do in the next 90 days? What's my 90-day benchmark to get to that yearly goal? And then what's my 30-day benchmark? And once I'm clear on those things, then I go, what do I need to do every single day? So for me, I have some fundamental habits. I meditate every single day, no matter what, 20 minutes a day, right? Are there days that I miss? Of course, we're human. And most of the time, I'm about 95% every single day. How often do I work out? For me, I'm in motion and movement every single day. Now, do you have to do an intense workout? No, but do some, go walk outside. For me, I love CrossFit. I love yoga. I love surfing. I love climbing. So I kind of have a variety there, but I'm in motion every single day. Why? Because motion creates emotion. Right? What else do? I journal. Here's my journal right here. You can see it right next to me. I don't have it far from me. I study. I learn. I listen to podcasts. I read books. And what I do is I create this time that's sacred for me in the morning. Now, I know it's easier for me than it probably is for your friend because I don't have 2 kids. He does. Right? So I want to be real about that and be honest about that. But for me, if I was a father and when I become a father, I'm still going to get up at a certain time, whether it has to become 4:30 in the morning instead of 5:30 in the morning or 6 a.m. To have that time of sacred time for me. because when I commit to my habits, I have more energy, I think more clearly, I get more done in less time. So it takes me maybe 4 hours to do what would normally take me 12 hours to do if I wasn't taking care of myself. So to recap all of that, step one is get clear on your stop doing list. And either delete and just stop doing, or hire somebody else to do some things for you, right, that you don't have to do. Number two is get clear on what your goals are, what your outcomes are, and create a plan to get there. And then number three is get clear on what your daily actions are. What are your rituals that produce power and confidence and action and certainty, so that you can get more done in less time and create the time to do that.
Yeah, sounds perfect. Yeah, that's great advice. I especially like the part where you mentioned, you always have to look at yourself and create that morning pattern. That's actually what I've been implementing the last couple of months. I wake up every morning at 4 o'clock, and that's the reason. My kids wake up early as well, but that gives me, like, on a bad day, it gives me 2 hours. On a good day, it gives me 3. So, but it gives me that time, what you mentioned, just do a workout, do the meditation, prepare my journaling for the day, and make sure that, I've done the podcast, I'm reading and everything. Yeah, I think it's a huge lesson. I think it's very important, and it's great advice. I hope people that are listening are not going to be like, 4 o'clock. Everybody has their own time. It's not like, you know what I mean? But what it
doesn't have to be 4 a.m. Yeah, for sure. And exactly. The other thing that keeps me really accountable to all this is the fact that I ask my clients to do it, right? So I coach, I have a coaching business. And if I'm asking my clients to do that, then you better believe I better do that, because if I don't, then I'm incongruent. I'm out of integrity, right? And so the thing that gets me up out of bed at 5 a.m. to go to a 6 a.m. CrossFit class is me going, well, I know I'm going to see my clients today. I want them to know that I am actually living my message. And that's super important. So it's so beautiful that you chose the message, Klaas, that you are helping fathers with, because it calls you to a higher level commitment as a dad, isn't it? Because you've got to be the example. And that's driving you to get up at 4 a.m. to do those things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a double example. Towards the fathers and towards my kids as well. I'm waking my kids up early as well, and trying to, little by little, they're very young. The one just turned 5. I'm actually trying to implement the same things. So having him do a small workout, having him starting to do a little bit of meditation, et cetera, et cetera. So those are things that I'm working on. I'm working out as well, like you have, like in a system, and I'm going to share that later on with the fathers out there, and I hope that's going to really help them and help their kids. So Ivo, I hope that gives an answer, and I think it's really useful. So I hope it's going to be useful for you as well. So thanks for that. I appreciate that, and I really appreciate the question, Ivo. That was awesome. That's a really good question. It's my belief that a fearless father should strive towards wealth, financial freedom, and very importantly, of course, teach this to his children and as a young age as possible. My question now is for you: is what's your philosophy on wealth and financial freedom, and then this linked to living a fearless life?
Yeah, so wealth is super important, because wealth gives you one really important thing, and that is the freedom to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, like no matter what, right? Most people are limited by their finances. So I've had some really limiting beliefs around money growing up that I got from my parents. Money is the root of all evil. Those things that you hear that society says. And isn't it crazy that, think about this, we're taught that money is the root of all evil, yet we spend most of our waking hours trying to make more of something that's evil.
Yeah.
It's totally conflicting, right? So I have some very positive beliefs around finances and money now. I see how it can help propel humanity to solve some of the world's greatest problems. The more money you make, the more you can give. One of my favorite quotes comes from a friend of mine named Joe Polish, who says, the person who thinks that money doesn't buy happiness hasn't given enough of it away.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that cool?
Yep.
And the way that I've created some of my foundational beliefs, one is simply that the money is a byproduct of value creation. Very simple, right? Meaning that the more that I can create value for somebody, the more money I can make. So what do I do to make more money in my coaching business? Well, I gain more knowledge and experience and skill sets and qualifications to help people at an even deeper level. The deeper transformation I can help somebody with, the more people I can impact, the more money I'm going to make, right? And this is going to fuel my values, which are travel and adventure and quality of time with my girlfriend, and eventually quality time with our kids one day, right? My family. One of the things that I'm doing right now currently, as you've interviewed me, is I'm reading a book that's a really amazing book on the topic of beliefs around money. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily like the title of the book, but it's still really good. I highly recommend it. It's called How Rich People Think. How Rich People Think. It's by an author named Stephen Siebold. Siebold, I think. You can find it on Amazon. And Amy, my girlfriend, and I, we read it on a nightly basis. So we sit in bed and I'll read one chapter. The chapters are like 1 to 2 pages. And it just has this distinction of like, here's how the ultra successful think and here's how everyone else thinks. Mm-hmm. It exposes me to blind spots of limiting beliefs that I have around money. Because it doesn't matter how great a strategy is. I can give you the best investment strategy in the world or the best, system to save money. But if your beliefs aren't in support of the behavior required to make that money or invest it, you're going to sabotage yourself over and over again. So start with the beliefs. The beliefs are the most important thing. I recommend checking out my book, right? I interviewed some people on the beliefs of success when it comes to finances. That's really important. I learn from mentors. I look at the people that are very successful that not just have a lot of money, but actually have a great quality of life. They're great fathers, they're great mothers, they are in great shape. And I ask them, what are your beliefs? How do you live your day-to-day life? And I model those people. Mm-hmm. I hope that helps. Does that answer, Klaas, your question?
Yeah, absolutely. That helps. I appreciate also the book title that you just mentioned. I finished just now. I guess everybody read that book, Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yes, Kiyosaki, love that book.
Yeah, exactly. That's very helpful. Recommend that one for people to start with. But of course, that doesn't talk as much about belief, but more about the beliefs are the most important thing. I actually. The other day, because I'm thinking about wealth more and everything. The other day, I actually was thinking, I want to be a millionaire without being like, oh my God. No, like the other day, I was washing the dishes and I'm like, not just saying I want to be. I was like, you know what? I'm going to be a millionaire. And I felt really good about it. I'm like, okay, I'm changing my beliefs. That's awesome. Yep. That's it's one thing saying I'm going to be a millionaire, and then you hear that voice in the back of your head saying, oh, what are you talking about? You can't even earn $1. How are you going to be a millionaire? So
and I would add one thing here. Act as if you already are.
Yeah.
Now I don't mean be fake and try to pretend you're a millionaire. Don't try to like lie to people, right? And don't do those selfie videos in front of a Lamborghini that's not yours. We're doing that on social media right now, right? So what I say is, what are the feelings, what are the thoughts and feelings that I would want to have, that I think I would have when I reach that goal of millionaire or, whatever that goal is? And how can you have those thoughts and feelings now? How can you have them today? Because by feeling a certain way, you take more inspired action, meaning you create more value, meaning you make more money. So the thoughts and the feelings come first. Everyone has it backwards. People think I need to go reach $1 million before I can feel happy and successful. No. Feel happy and successful today with where you are, with so much gratitude for what you have, no matter how little you have. I don't care what your financial situation is, who's watching this, whether you have tons of debt or you just got bankrupt, the fact that you have access to this technology means we are wealthier than the majority of the planet. Mm. Straight up, right? No matter what. And so the fact that you've got clean water and a roof over your head and clothes on your back is so much to be grateful for. I love going on trips to certain areas of the world where I just see people in a place where I'm like, I am so blessed. How can I help others? Right? Because it puts things in perspective. I'm blessed to live in San Diego, one of the most beautiful places in the world. And people have great quality of life here. Not everyone, but some people do. And it's easy to take that for granted when you focus on thinking, oh, I just need to get more of those green, those green pieces of paper with dead presidents on for the US dollar, of course, right? That it's not about that. It's about how do I serve at a higher level? How do I live the quality of life that I can? How do I be the greatest example to humanity, to my kids, to my family, to my communities? And of course, you're already, Klaas, a millionaire. So I love it, man.
Thanks for that. I appreciate that. Let's wrap it up. I got one more question, and then I'd like to give you the opportunity to tell people where they can find you and where they can reach you. So actually, you already mentioned a couple, but besides your own book, of course, what's because I've noticed in myself that the best way also to improve your fearless mindset is reading books, right? You've talked a lot about it, so could you share a little bit what's your philosophy, but also important, what I would like to hear from you is, what are like the 3 books that you would mostly recommend in regards to create, or that would help you create a fearless mindset?
Ooh, I love it. Okay, so in addition to the Fearless Mindset, my book, of course, right?
Excellent.
I would say that in the area of mindset and emotional stability, a book called Loving What Is by Byron Katie.
Okay.
Loving What Is introduces people into a powerful process called the work, where here's the reality. Most of our suffering doesn't come from facts. It doesn't come from somebody saying something to us or somebody hurting us. It comes from the story that we attach to it, right? The meaning that we apply. So it gives you access to a process to look at that and release the emotional charge so that you can be in your power. So Loving What Is by Byron Katie is one of my top recommendations. When it comes to business, one of the greatest books that I ever read, and my favorite book, is a book called Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. It's a behemoth of a book. It's about 1,400 pages, so it's a big one. But it taught me how to be a producer instead of a consumer. A consumer is someone who takes, right, and just buys. A producer is someone who produces value. It's the game changers, the masters, the thought leaders, the entrepreneurs of the world that are producers, and this is a phenomenal book. And then I would say when it comes to thinking in a most positive way around finances too, one of my all-time favorites, Klaas, is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Okay, yeah.
Very common book, one of the most well-read books in the world. But if you haven't read that and you want to start improving your financial life, which is a great gift to give your kids, right? If you're a father on this interview, highly recommend Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Those are the 3.
Those are excellent books. I appreciate you for sharing that. There's 2 books on that I'm definitely gonna sort out and put in my closet to read as soon as possible. Thanks for that. So as I mentioned, let me first start with saying, I really appreciate you being in this interview with me. It's been really valuable. So I hope that people enjoyed it. And last, I'd like to give you the opportunity for people that are listening right now, that listen to you, they're like, wow, this is absolutely amazing, or maybe have still some questions. How can they reach you? How can they learn more from you?
Totally. Great question. So best way to connect with me is actually on social media, specifically Facebook. I create a lot of content on there for free.
Okay.
So you can kind of find my profile by just searching Peter Scott IV as in the 4th. I'm the 4th. So if you just search that, you'll find my profile. Second is I create a lot of content on my website, on my blog, and that's designafearlesslife.com. So if you want to go a little bit deeper, I'd love, Klaas, to give a gift to your listeners and your viewers, specifically on the topic of becoming fearless, overcoming fear. And what that is I actually offer it's completely free, 5-day Face Your Fear challenge. And It's so much fun. Basically what you do is you get a daily video from me. It's short, it's about 5 minutes long. It teaches you a distinction about fear, and then it challenges you to conquer one specific fear in your life. So, fear of public speaking, fear of rejection, fear of charging what you're worth, fear of failure. Those are some of the fears that I have you do. And you can get that for free at challengeyourfear.com is the name of that website. So you may want to, I'm going to put the show notes together or share this when you share it on social media. And then the last thing is a great final place to start would be with the book that you just ordered, Klaas. So that's called The Fearless Mindset. You can find that on Amazon no matter where in the world you are. Just search that, and I would say start there. And I would love, most importantly, is for you to take what you've learned in this interview and implement it. Apply it to your life. That's the most important thing. I don't want you to just listen to this interview for information. It may have been inspiring, which is awesome if it was, but I want it to be applicable. I want you to go out and I want you to list out, what is that worst nightmare? What is the thing that you can do to prevent it? What is the thing that you can, all those little nuggets that I gave you of action, go and implement that now so you can get the results on the other side.
Perfect. Thanks for that, and thank you for the gift. That sounds really cool. A 5-day challenge is something that will really help with taking those first steps. So yeah, that will conclude our interview. I'd like to thank everybody for listening. If you want to keep following us, you can reach us on our website, becomeafearlessfather.com, and of course we're also on Facebook and on YouTube under the same name. So for now, I wish everybody a wonderful evening or day, whichever you are. Again, thank you very much for being on this first live podcast, and let's talk soon.
Thank you, Klaas.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Are you still meeting up with your friends now that you're a father? Kids making you stress out. You got no time for yourself to work out, read, or relax. Can you still remember the time you were hanging out with your friends, feeling energetic, happy, and confident? Spending time together and talking about your life and your crazy dreams. You're feeling alone now, don't you? No one to share your challenges with, and you're just running around from one storm into the next. Well, it's time to change this now. Join me and the Brotherhood of Fearless Fathers to speak on a weekly basis with like-minded dads to crush your challenges, face your fears with determination, be held accountable, and regain control of your life. If you want to become the hero your family needs you to be, then go to becomeafearlessfather.com/brotherhood. I'm looking forward to seeing you on one of our next calls.